Welcome to Dodgers Daily. I'm Casey Porter. I'm so glad that you decided to tune in. Boy, we have a busy show today. Going to talk trade deadline. Going to talk the Dodgers, how they beat the A's last night. So as I bring in Austin, boy, what a a crazy period. The trade deadline's always very dramatic. So hey, welcome in, Austin. What are your thoughts about the trade deadline, the Dodgers last night?
Yeah, no, pretty crazy, eventful day for the Dodgers. I know you had the victory last night, which is really exciting. All of the focus, however, was on the trade deadline. What are the Dodgers going to do to try to fortify this roster to make a push for the World Series? And I think for a lot of Dodgers fans, I know there's a lot of disappointment because we have been talking for a couple weeks now about them needing this number one ace level starter. We saw them be aggressive in that pursuit. However, they did end up a little bit short on that. We saw them move some guys from the upper levels of the minors who likely weren't going to give opportunities. They're going to get opportunities elsewhere. So there's a lot of moving pieces, perhaps not exactly what Dodgers fans were anticipating, but this team is still a really good team, and it's going to be a force in the playoffs.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts? The way that I described the Dodgers as far as this trade deadline, they were very aggressive. They just weren't reckless in the sense that they went after the guys they needed to get. They went after the number one starters. They did everything they could to get Justin Verlander. They did everything they could to get Eduardo Rodriguez. They did everything they could to get dylancease, right up to being reckless, like giving away Bobby Miller and Emmet Sheehan, something like that. So I thought they were very aggressive. They just weren't reckless. Would that be accurate, you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly accurate. And especially in this market this year, which was much more of a seller's market where teams had to give up a lot more than usual to get what exactly they needed. I think that's a byproduct of the fact that there's more playoff teams, that there was a little bit muddy as far as who was actually buyers, who was actually sellers. And the fact that teams really do start to value a lot of their prospects. They do value the controllability of a lot of these players. And so in order to get exactly what you need, it seems like you might have to give up more than what you're willing to. And I think for the Dodgers, I think they are an extremely disciplined front office that is not willing to give up more than what they are wanting in order to get that number one starter. So I think with that, I think they pursued aggressively, but I don't think they were reckless in what they were able to give up. And I think that's exactly right.
No doubt about it. Hey, this extra wild card spot that they started last year, I kind of compare it to the transfer portal. Me being an Oklahoma State fan, Mike Gundy, the legendary coach here at OSU, who's just the best coach OSU's ever had. Okay, so his formula, he's had a formula for winning here. OSU being a smaller school, of course the Dodgers are bigger, but what he's done is he's taken the 3-star players that he can get, like OU and Texas, they get the 5-star players, right? Well, OSU gets the 3-star player, and then what they do is they put them in the system. They don't play them for the first 3 or 4 years, so by the time they're playing a college guy on the field, he's 21, 22 years old. He's been in college on that training table and in college training for 3 to 4 years before he ever plays. Then he's going on the field against basically true freshmen, 5-star true freshmen for OU and Texas. And he's as good as those guys at that time because he's mature. And it's worked very well for Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. Well, here comes the transfer portal. Now nobody wants to wait 3 to 4 years to play. So if that's your plan with them, they all leave, right? Okay, so here comes this extra wild card in the major leagues. The Dodgers have always had the plan, hey, if we go in the trade market instead of free agency, we can get the exact same type of superstar player, but we don't have to sign them to 10-year contracts, right? So let's not be reckless in free agency. Let's wait and pinpoint our exact needs in the trade market, and then let's be aggressive in the trade market like we saw with Trey Turner, like we saw it with Max Scherzer. Okay, well, now that you have this extra wild card, that's really not a viable option anymore. So I think the Dodgers, what this shows is that the Dodgers need to change their philosophy, modify their philosophy like these college coaches had to do to deal with the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely accuracy in that, and as far as there being a need for the Dodgers to pursue potentially other alternatives. But And there's also the aspect of, I think the Dodgers weren't anticipating a lot of the main frontline starter issues at the beginning of the year as well. I mean, they weren't expecting Dustin May to be missing basically all of this season. They weren't expecting the regression for Julio Urias. And so I think there can be definitely some more aggressiveness that you have in the offseason just to try to fill a lot of these unanticipated needs. But there also needs to be a recognition that a lot of the market at the trade deadline could be shifting, where you are going to have to give up more if you want to pursue a trade at the trade deadline than you had in years past. So I think there has to be a calculation that has to be made with that in mind to ultimately make the decision as far as what is going to be best as far as getting the most talent for your roster.
Yep. But I think also you could say you could easily have made the assumption that Clayton Kershaw was only going to pitch about, matter of fact, most of our off-season shows were centered around, do you think Clayton Kershaw will throw more than 120 innings this year? So I think it could have been easily assumed that he was going to be somewhere around 120 innings, which means he's going to have time off. I think it could have been assumed if you looked at the fringe numbers of Tony Gonsolin that maybe his production was outproducing, maybe actually how he has pitched lately. So I think maybe some of his regression this year could easily have been, matter of fact, I think the Dodgers probably predicted some of that whenever they fought him through the arbitration process, if you remember that. So I think those two scenarios, plus I think, when you're talking about a guy coming off of Tommy John, it's a wild card, man. Yeah. Even if he would have stayed healthy, that doesn't mean he's going to have. It takes a long time to get the feels back. So relying on somebody coming off of that major of an injury, I think also the Dodgers, it could be easily said that they should have anticipated at the very least they weren't going to get a fully functioning Dustin May. So from those perspectives, I can understand why people have the notion or the idea or the thought that the Dodgers should have been more aggressive over the winter looking for a number one starter.
Yeah, and I think that is accurate as far as there being a little bit potentially some oversight. I think they anticipated some of these issues. Some of the issues they expected to be able to fix. I think they probably expected to be able to fix a guy like a Noah Syndergaard, or at least get some sort of production from him. I think they expected to get a little bit more production than what they've had, instead of having to rely a little bit earlier than what they would have liked to on some of the rookie pitchers. But I think with all of this in mind, I think they will use this kind of as a learning curve and take this in mind as they go forward through the next couple of seasons as far as the game plan of getting talent.
Yep. I think they planned on using the rookies. Hey, maybe if Clayton Kershaw needs to throttle down for a week or two, give him a spot start here or there. Hey, maybe if Dustin May, can only go 3 or 4 innings at a night because he's thrown quite a bit lately, maybe, piggyback a guy here or there. They certainly didn't expect to have to use Michael Grove, Bobby Miller, Emmet Sheehan in 100% starting roles for as long as they've had to do it.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay, so let's get into some of the moves that have made. Of course, we talked about the fallout over some of the moves the Dodgers have made. Eddie's Leonard, Justin Bruihl, they got DFA'd. Well, we mentioned in the last show that there's no doubt that there's neither one of those will even come close to clearing waivers. Well, they didn't even get to waivers, okay? So they got picked up via the trade market. Eddie's Leonard, hey, he's coming close to you, and he's going to join Lyle Lockhart Jr. They're going to pair back up with the Detroit Tigers organization. So Eddie's Leonard got traded to the Tigers. Congratulations to him. Justin Bruihl's got picked up via the trade by the Colorado Rockies. And then Devin Mann, Devin Mann will get into the top 30 prospect. He got traded to the Royals for ryanyarbrough. So talk about those three.
Yeah, no, I think all of these, except for perhaps the Devin Mann trade, were kind of anticipated after last week that they would be moving on for a different organization. I know with Eddie, somebody that I've had a chance to watch, somebody who has been a really good player, and good clubhouse guy as well. I know he was kind of added to the 40-man roster probably earlier than what the Dodgers had wanted him to add.
Good point.
And so with this, I think he was running out of some options with the knowledge that they weren't going to be able to utilize his skills at the major league level kind of on the timeline that the Dodgers wanted. And so I think with this in mind, I think Eddie's Leonard would have been best suited to go to an organization where he'd have the opportunity to get more playing time, where he'd had the opportunity to actually get a chance at the major league roster, which I think he's going to do in Detroit, which personally I'm super pumped because he's going to be much closer to my home. He's going to be much closer to where I'll have the chance to watch him and see him continue to develop. I know for a lot of Dodgers fans, though, it is a little bit disappointing to see somebody as talented as he is move on from the organization.
Yeah, and you mentioned this, you hinted to it. Eddie's is a victim of COVID, and when I say that, they did not have the Rule 5 draft, not last year, but the year before, and because of that, the Dodgers didn't know that was going to happen. They put Eddie's and Yorbit on that Rule 5 to protect them from the Rule 5 draft that never happened, and if they'd have known that in advance, they would not have put Eddie's Leonard or Yorbit Vivas, either one of them, on the 40-man. They would have waited, and he still would have been with the Dodgers. The reason why he's with the Tigers right now is because he got put on that 40-man. They needed that spot to go get Joe Kelly, to go get Lance Lynn, and he was the most logical guy because he was the guy that was furthest away from the major leagues that was on the 40-man. So he was just a victim of that. He got squeezed out from that perspective. And then, like you said, once that he got DFA'd, as a matter of fact, he didn't play another game for Tulsa.
Yeah.
The Dodgers knew that he was gone. They knew if they, and we mentioned this even before they did it. If you DFA Yorbit or Eddie's, they're gone. So if you do it, you don't have them anymore. That's exactly what happened. Super excited for Devin Mann. Now that brings us to kind of the next aspect of this trade deadline. Devin Mann was one of the 6 top 30 prospects for the Dodgers that are going to become Rule 5 eligible over the offseason, which means, Rule 5 is put in place so teams can't just stock up on prospects, never having any intentions of moving to major leagues, and stock up just so their competition can't have these guys, kind of like in the old days before you had recruiting limits. A place like OU or Texas could go get 200 kids and, maybe 150 of them they never plan on playing. They're just so OSU doesn't get them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you were signed at 18 or earlier, then after 5 years, you either got to get put on the 40-man or you're eligible to be drafted in Rule 5. For 19 and older, it's 4 years. Okay, so this winter, what's going to happen is now that Devin Mann's traded, he's off of that. Nick Frasso, Landon Knack, Kyle Hurt, Jose Ramos, Yainer Fernandez. Those are the 5 guys that are on. Of course, there's a lot of other great prospects too that aren't on the top 30 prospect list. But those 5 guys are on the top 30 specifically, and they are eligible for the Rule 5 draft. And I think at least the first 4, Yainer, I only say because we saw with Jose Ramos last year, still at the high A level. He probably does not get taken in a Rule 5 scenario, but I don't think there's any doubt. Nick Frasso, Landon Knack, Kyle Hurt, Jose Ramos, all 4 of those guys will get taken in the Rule 5 if you don't protect them and put them on the 40-man. So I think one of the residual effects of what the Dodgers not making a trade here at the deadline is the fact that you have to put all 4 of those guys on the 40-man in the offseason.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and that's something that the Dodgers have to keep in mind at this deadline is the future roster construction. You always have to be looking for the future. You always have to be looking for what's going to happen to put the best 40 people on the roster. And I think that is something that they took in mind when they looked at a guy like a Devin Mann. Look, Devin Mann, he's proven himself at AAA. He deserves the opportunity to go somewhere and actually get a chance at the major league level. And we've seen that with a lot of his statistics on the minor leagues. You look at a 125 WRC plus at the AAA level, at a hitter's environment. He's putting up numbers well above league average at the AAA level. He is is able to move around, play a bunch of different positions. He fits that versatility. And I think with a guy like a Devin Mann, I don't know if the Dodgers would have added him to the 40-man roster, but other teams would have missed out big time if they hadn't taken him in the Rule 5 draft next year. And so I think with this, I think you took a guy who Dodgers didn't really see a role for him on the major league level. I think it's best for him to get an opportunity elsewhere. He's going to get that in Kansas City, and he's going to kill it over there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, that's just an interesting, that just kind of goes into, there's more than, hey, we just need this guy, we need that. There's so many different moving parts to, you talk about all the time, Austin, not only the roster as it sets, not only setting yourself up to winning the World Series this year, giving yourself the best chance, future roster construction. Hey, you can't afford to take a Nick Frasso, a Kyle Hurt, a Landon Knack, a Jose Ramos. You can't just lose those guys and not get any return for those, because they're guys that are all going to be in the major leagues, and they're going to be guys, in my opinion, that all have successful major league careers. So it would be a reckless situation if you're the Dodgers, to lose those guys to a Rule 5 draft and get nothing back.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely right. You don't want to waste a lot of the talents of these guys. You don't want them just sitting at the upper levels of the minors when they're good enough to be playing for the major leagues. You also don't want to miss out on a lot of these talents and not get anything back from them. You want to be continuing to develop the farm system, continuing to develop the major leagues in whatever way you see best suitable. That is how you attain a long-term success, long-term achievement of the organization, which is something that the Dodgers have been extremely good at.
Yep. Yeah, so when Oklahoma City, they were the Houston Astros AAA affiliates before they became the Dodgers. As soon as they became the Dodgers, what happened is the roster immediately got older at the AAA level, because the Dodgers, they love the older type veteran guys. We see that all the time. So because of that, they go get the veterans at the major league level. They go get a bunch of veterans for the AAA level. Because of that, then they're moving their prospects like Nick Frasso, like Jose Ramos. They're moving them up at a slower pace. So moving these guys up at a slower pace than maybe other organizations would. Like MJ Melendez, Bobby Witt Jr., who I saw a lot last year with the Royals at the AA level, they've already been in the major leagues for this entire year and then part of last year. Okay, whereas some of the guys that for the drillers that were competing against them are just now barely getting into AAA. So the Dodgers are slower at moving a lot of their prospects than other organizations, and because of that, they end up having a stockpile of talent at every single position. And so, it just makes, that's also why I say there's no way to get this farm system, because at the top, they go get so many veterans. Like I said, it just stocks one prospect on top of the other, and it's always going to be that way.
Yeah, that's just the way that the Dodgers like to stack their minor league system. They like to have some of those older veterans that they could potentially call up and fill a role if needed at the major league level. And they like to get a lot of their guys slowly develop. We see that a lot often with some of their pitching prospects, just pitching them for 2, 3, 4 innings, slowing their development. We see that with a guy like a Michael Busch, who's been ready for the major leagues for what seems like quite a long time. This is just the philosophy that the Dodgers have for their organization, for their player development. Obviously, they've had a track record of developing and getting a lot of really good talent, getting the most out of a lot of their talent. That's just the way that the Dodgers seem to like to have their player development system work.
So let me give you an example. On the AAA roster, Matt Andriese, okay, definitely veteran. Zach Birdie, you've got Robbie Erlin, okay, you got Ken Giles, you've got Brian Hudson, who's fairly veteran, almost 30 years old. Adam Kolarek, who I think he just got traded away.
Yes,
Adam
he
Kolarek
just got traded to New York with Phil Bickford.
Yep. Okay, you've got Tyson Miller they just brought in, Mike Montgomery, Jimmy Nelson, okay, Jake Reed. They just brought in Ryan Scher from the Boston Red Sox, Wander Suero. Those are just the pitchers. At catcher, you have David Freitas and Patrick Mazeika. And then as far as your infielders go, you brought in Pat Valaika, and you also brought in Yanni Hernandez. Of course, Yanni's still younger, on the younger side. And then as your outfielders, okay, Cole Calhoun, David Dahl, Steven Duggar. So there you go. I mean, that's your AAA roster right there. I mean, that's a roster that in some ways is older than a lot of the major league rosters around the league.
Yeah, and they want those guys just in case they need to call up those guys, for instance, in case of injuries. They like to stockpile a lot of veterans, get them with some of the development system and see if they can get something to click, get something to work, and also have them kind of just as an insurance policy. And so that what that does is that backlogs a lot of the rest of the farm system. That's a lot of younger guys that are growing, just getting into professional baseball. And so they are able to take a little bit more time at the lower levels of the minor leagues.
That's also why the Dodgers have, of course, they have a million different resources, but that's also why they've had so much success at the major league level, because they go get a JD Martinez, they go get a Freddie Freeman, a Mookie Betts, and then also at the same time have one of the best, if not the best, minor league systems in baseball. They have their cake and they eat it too, and it's because of that philosophy right there, the names that I just gave you, the ways that they do it. It can be frustrating because you want these prospects to move faster, but you certainly can't argue with the fact that they're able to build an elite farm system and have elite success at the major league level as well. Okay, so let's get into some of the reasons why the Dodgers didn't get basically the three pitching targets that they were looking for yesterday. You're talking about Justin Verlander, Eduardo Rodriguez, and then dylancease. So first of all, Austin, dive into Justin Verlander.
Yeah, no. So this is the guy that we talked about a couple of days ago, as it was the big rumor that the Dodgers were looking after a frontline starter. What better starter should do that than a future first ballot Hall of Famer? And so the Mets, it became clear that they were starting to sell following the Max Scherzer trade. And so there's rumors about the Dodgers going after, heavily pursuing a Justin Verlander. Yep. One of the issues with this is he had a no trade clause, which becomes a little bit of a pattern in this trade deadline for the Dodgers trying to acquire starting pitchers. And so with that, he has the choice as far as where he wants to go. That certainly, I think, played a little bit of an aspect of it. I think part of the aspect, too, is if you look at the return that the Astros gave up to the Mets for Justin Verlander, they gave some of their top prospects in order to get Justin Verlander for this year, for next year, and then for potentially, if he pitches enough innings next year, the year following that as well. And so they gave up a really good haul in order to get a Justin Verlander type pitcher. I also think that's a place where he feels pretty comfortable pitching. It feels like a home for him, just with the place logistically of where it is, where their spring training home is. I think that overall just made a lot more sense for Justin to go to a place like a Houston instead of uprooting his family and moving to a different location in Los Angeles and kind of starting over from there. I think it made a little bit more sense and was easier to give up that no trade clause to go to a place that felt a little bit more like home. I think that is something that the Dodgers weren't able to offer a guy like a Justin Verlander in that trade package. And I think that ultimately is one of the main reasons why they weren't able to acquire him.
Yep. You got double whammied on each end. He felt more comfortable in Houston, obviously, because he's had a massive amount of success there. And then also, hey, man, these guys are human. He probably was thinking, but boy, how uncomfortable would that be to actually play for the Dodgers? He knows how the Dodgers fans feel about that 2017 Astros team, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure he definitely felt more comfortable in Houston, and probably the fact that it would be a weird situation at the least for him coming to the Dodgers also played a factor too.
Yeah, no, that absolutely does. And I think also the fact that he recognizes that Houston, for as much as it sucks for Dodgers fans, is still a very successful organization, and they are still going to provide him with a really good shot at winning the World Series. That's one of the things that the Dodgers can offer a lot of players is the constant ability to play in the playoffs, the constant ability to fight for a World Series, to give you the best opportunity to do that. Houston has that as well. And so I think all of this combined, the fact that he's got a catcher that he's familiar with in Houston as well, the fact that Houston is willing to give up a lot of their top guys in order to get a Justin Verlander, I think all culminated in the fact that he's going back to Houston and he's not going to be a Los Angeles Dodger.
Yep. Eduardo Rodriguez, is it as simple as the fact that his family's back on the East Coast?
So with Eduardo Rodriguez, obviously this is the big news, and this is, I think, the source of the Dodgers fans' biggest frustration was the fact that there seemed to be an agreement in place between the Tigers and the Dodgers to send Eduardo Rodriguez to Los Angeles. But that deal was declined specifically because Eduardo Rodriguez had a 10-team no-trade clause, and the Dodgers were surprisingly on that list, which I don't think they have been declined like that, at least very often in the past. I don't think there's a very big history with that. Now, going back into a little bit of the history as far as Eduardo Rodriguez's time in Detroit, last year, mid-season, he had some personal issues that he was dealing with. I don't know if they were family related. I'm not into speculating as far as what those were, but he was off for about a month and a half or so dealing with a lot of those personal issues. He was away from the team during that time for a month and a half, 2 months or so. And with that, I think there was a desire, I think there really was a desire for him to be fairly close to a lot of his family. Because of a lot of those personal issues that he was probably dealing with. And his family, which is well known now, lives more on the eastern side of the United States, closer to the eastern side of the United States at least. And so I think that absolutely did play some sort of impact, some sort of role into why he decided he didn't want to go to Los Angeles. I think there's also the fact that there could be an aspect, I don't know how much this is, Tigers were willing to stick with him through that. I don't know if there's some sort of personal bias towards that. I don't know what exactly his feelings are towards Los Angeles, towards the city of Los Angeles. And ultimately, he has every single right under his contract to be able to say he doesn't want to go to 10 certain cities. What I think is frustrating for Dodgers fans is the fact that that wasn't made known beforehand to where they could pivot and go in a different direction. I know that is something of great frustration for both Dodgers fans and for Tigers fans. Tigers fans specifically because they are looking to acquire younger talent. Dodgers fans because they're looking to acquire a frontline starting pitcher. Ultimately, they had a deal that was in place that seemed to be ready to go. They just weren't able to pull that trigger specifically because of the right that Eduardo Rodriguez earned with his contract that he signed back in the offseason 2021-2022 offseason.
Yeah, and the opt-out, he's going to be a free agent in 2027 no matter what. Now, he does have an opt-out after this season, which I tried to explain to some people on Twitter is a good thing for the Dodgers. It's like it's even better than just becoming a free agent in 2027 because this guy's going to be incentivized to have a just knockdown, drag-out, awesome second half because if he does, then he's going to opt out and get more money in his contract. So if he does opt out after this year, that means he just came to the Dodgers and completely knocked it out, which means that he was that number one type of guy, top of the rotation type of guy the Dodgers needed, and probably, gave them a great chance to get to the World Series at that point if he got to the point to where he did opt out on that contract. So I think the opt-out was attractive to the Dodgers. And then also I think he was the guy they targeted the most. I think we've talked about this, Austin, because the next crop of left-handed starters is in Great Lakes. Mm-hmm. So he checks a lot of boxes for this Dodgers team. You don't know if Julio Urias is going to resign. You have no idea what the the future of Clayton Kershaw is going to be. So, hey, there is a scenario out there to where the Dodgers have 0 left-handed starters next year. And so he would have checked that box.
Yeah, and they still could have the opportunity to get him in the offseason. I know he's pitched really well for Detroit, and he's on what is a fairly team-friendly deal, especially if we look at last offseason for some of the prices for a lot of the starting pitchers. He very much is on a team-friendly deal. He could be looking to rework a contract over there. Could be looking to get a different contract in the offseason. Dodgers will still have the opportunity in the offseason. I think Dodgers fans are probably frustrated that they weren't able to get that guy when they seem to have needed him during the regular season as well, during the trade deadline. So there's a little bit of frustration. I wouldn't take that frustration out on Eduardo. He has every right to do exactly what he did. I think there's just overall frustration, maybe in a lack of communication as far as his unwillingness to want to go to Los Angeles, to that market. I think that is fair, but as far as the player exercising a right in his contract, he has every single right to do that.
Dylancease, was it as simple as the White Sox just deciding, hey, we just don't want to trade this guy?
I don't think so. I think they were, because of this market being such a seller's market, I think they were open to just about anybody. However, they're going to try to get as much as they possibly could for a guy like Dylancease, for a guy who has proven to be a Cy Young caliber pitcher in the past, who has that upside and who has years of control. They're going to require a lot for a pitcher like that. I think the Dodgers were not willing to meet that price tag that Dylancease required, especially because he hasn't been that Cy Young level pitcher, at least this season, which is what they'd be looking for. They'd be looking for a pitcher who can be that number one starter for this season.
He has been maybe in the last month and a half, but to give up a guy like, I think they probably wanted Bobby Miller, to give up a guy like Bobby Miller, who already this year in his time at the major league level has very similar stats, if in a lot of situations, better stats than Dylancease has at the major league level this year. That was too much. I just, as from a Dodgers perspective, no way do you trade Bobby Miller for Dylancease.
Yeah, and especially with Dylancease starting to enter arbitration years, starting to require a lot more money for his services. If you can have comparable stats with potentially more upside, depending on how you view a guy like a Bobby Miller, for a cheaper cost for a longer period of time as well, and especially with the Dodgers potentially wanting to go after big ticket free agents as well, I think it made more sense for the Dodgers to take a guy like a Bobby Miller, perhaps this season, get him some playoff experience, get him some of that which he's going to be relied upon in the future for a lot of that playoff experiences. I think you would much rather have a guy like a Bobby Miller than have Dylancease, which might be you might feel a little bit more comfortable with just marginally, but long term, you're not going to have for quite as long, and it's going to be more expensive.
It's kind of interesting. We went from the conversation, would you rather have Bobby Miller or Lucas Giolito in a playoff setting, to would you rather have Bobby Miller or Dylancease? That's how good Bobby Miller and how well thought of he is. I think, of course, it's all speculation because nobody's ever going to actually know every single conversation, every word that was said in those conversations, in the trade conversations between the two organizations. But, hey, I'm super pumped. I think this definitely means that Bobby Miller is part of your plans as far as being one of your starters in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's exciting because of his stuff, because of his ability to step up in those big moments, seeing him get that opportunity to do so in the playoffs, which I think he can absolutely thrive in that role. I think this is going to be a great learning experience. I think he's going to take this opportunity and run with it.
Yep. And, hey, I wasn't against moving Sheehan to the Mets for maybe a Justin Verlander and maybe even a couple other guys if you throw in. There's always some other guys that get thrown into these trades as well. So I wasn't against that for the simple fact that Emmet Sheehan is from New York City. Mm-hmm. So I thought that would be a really cool experience for Emmet. while the Dodgers are getting the exact return they need and a guy that really could go out and be your ace, and not just for the rest of the season. The Dodgers are in first place. They've done that with the roster they've already had. But you're looking to make moves that's going to make you better in the playoffs. Justin Verlander, I don't think there's any doubt about it. He would have done that for the Dodgers. So I think he definitely, massively would have improved the Dodgers' odds of getting to the World Series. And then Emmet would have got to go back home. So I thought that was kind of a cool dynamic that was interesting to watch play out.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to play out. Ultimately, Emmet Sheehan is still a Los Angeles Dodger, and he's going to be part of their plans for the future. And he likely has a role in this rotation going into potentially next year. And the years to come, you're going to see him continue his development in Los Angeles. And that, I think, is a takeaway that you can take from this and be excited about. You get to see Emmet Sheehan a little bit longer in the Los Angeles Dodgers uniform.
Boy, and as a prospect, as guys that cover prospects like we do, this is an exciting day for us because this is a vote of confidence for your farm system. It's a vote of confidence for your prospects, and it just means those guys are going to get to have more major league time this year and in the future. So super exciting to be a guy who covers prospects.
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple different things that you can take away from this entire trade deadline, just looking at everything. I think it's a vote of confidence for their player development system for a lot of these younger guys. We're looking for these younger guys to help out this team in the future. I think they believe in their player development, not just the players, but also the coaching staffs at the lower levels, at coaching staffs at the minor leagues to help build and develop a lot of these guys. I think it's also a vote in confidence in their ability to take guys and make the best out of them, to take a lot of their coaches and help these players get the best out of them. You look at everybody that the Dodgers acquired, a guy like a Kike Hernandez, who has been struggling this season. They believe if you put him in the right culture, they can make him better. We saw in the start with Lance Lynn yesterday. If the Dodgers can get 7 innings of 3-run ball from Lance Lynn, you'll take that every single day and you'll run with it. He will be able to provide them length, and he has the potential to be a real upside pitcher like we saw. Obviously still needs to work on some of the home runs. That seems to be a little bit of an issue going back to his time with Chicago. Dodgers can work with a guy like that. You saw with some of their other acquisitions, right, as well, a guy like Ahmed Rosario can fill him into certain roles. You see a guy like a Ryanyarbrough, who they just added right a little bit after the trade deadline. You saw that news come in. A guy who's got really a couple of key skills that he has. He doesn't give up a lot of walks. He doesn't give up really hard contact. And so he can be a guy that the Dodgers are able to utilize and be an effective guy in whatever role they see him, a guy who can limit some of the hard contact, can get some chases to induce a lot of that contact. And so the Dodgers didn't get that big name guy. They got a lot of other role players that they believe with under the coaching that we keep saying is the best coaching in baseball, can help bring the best out of these guys and ultimately field the best team with the star talent that they already have. It's time for the Dodgers development and player system to take these guys, make the best out of them, and see what happens in the postseason.
Don't forget they already picked up Ryan Brazier too, who's been fantastic.
Yeah, and that just shows the track record that the Dodgers player development can have if they take a guy in. You don't necessarily need all those big names. And the winners of the trade deadline are not always the winners of the World Series. It is those teams that continue to work on these guys and are able to get the best out of them when they need them the most. And that's what we're going to see if the Dodgers are able to do.
The cure can't be worse than disease, meaning you can't, go out and sell your farm and actually end up in worse case and worse positioning than you were before you made a trade because you gave away too many guys and too many parts to your future. So that being number one. And then also this is like a broken record. The Dodgers go out and they get guys that fit their formula, that they can fix. You know, a guy like an Andrew Heaney last year, a guy like a Tyler Anderson, a guy like a Chris Martin, a guy like a Yency Almonte, a guy like an Evan Phillips, and then, you know, a guy like a Ryan Brazier. They go out and get those guys. Dodgers fans are upset because they want the shiny name. You know, they want the top name that they keep hearing over and over, probably on social media. And then when you look at it, the guys they actually got were as good or better than the shiny name that you could have gone and got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they have a unique ability to find the exact talent that they want and that can fit exactly with what they need, and they're able to take those guys in and allow them to showcase the skills that other teams might have looked over. And I think that's exactly what the Dodgers are betting on for the players that they got at the trade deadline this year. And they're going to need a lot of these guys to step up. They're going to need a lot of their coaches and player development staff to help these guys be better, because they'll need a lot of these roles to be utilized in the postseason.
Any final thoughts before we get on to our minor league part of this show?
Yeah, no, overall, I think with the trade deadline, obviously the Dodgers tried to do a whole bunch of different stuff. They tried to go after their starting pitcher. They tried to go after a guy like a Nolan Arenado potentially. Didn't get those guys. You still have an incredible amount of talent in the farm system that is going to yield some really positive results in the future. So there's that to look forward to. I think the guys that they did get can fill some of those roles and be really effective and helpful in that aspect. So I would just be patient with a lot of this Dodgers, and I would trust the process with their coaching staff, because that is what they are relying on to be successful for the World Series.
Okay, time now to transition to the minor league part of this show. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it. Let's take a trip down the farm. The AAA Oklahoma City Dodgers opened up a homestand against the Round Rock Express, the AAA affiliates of the Texas Rangers, last night, and they dropped one 4-2 to the Express. But hey, there was some good moments last night. Miguel Vargas, he homered again. He has been hitting the ball very well as of late. I mentioned, hey, we know Miguel Vargas can hit AAA pitching, but what we want to see is he driving the baseball? Are the exit velos good? Is he getting the ball in the air? And hey, he's hit some home runs as of late. He's hit several balls over 100 miles an hour. So all of that is good for Miguel Vargas. Michael Busch, he had another hit last night. He went 1 for 4, and so his average is up now to 317 on the year. OPS for the entire season, Michael Busch, OPS entire season, 1025. It's unbelievable. This guy is not at the major league level right now. He has done everything he possibly can do at the AAA level. Right now, in my opinion, still playing in AAA, spinning his wheels a bit, but like we said, the Dodgers have so much talent. There's just really not room for him right now on the Major League roster. Cole Calhoun, he had a hit last night as well. Ryan Ward has been absolutely smoking hot. He has raised his average close to 30 points the last month and a half. He had another 2-hit game, and he actually has moved his average up to 249. It was a slow start for the Millbury, Massachusetts native, but I've talked about his hit tool in the past. One of the best hit tools of any young prospect in the game. He has the ability to hit for power, which he was, one of those guys with Johnny DeLuca, Mookie Betts last year that was fighting for the lead in the entire organization for the amount of home runs last year. And he was going to hit about, he was hitting in the 290 range till he hurt his hand. And then after he came back after that, he really just, he couldn't get anything going after he came back off of injury. That happened in early August. He came back a little bit there in the early September and couldn't quite get it going. So his average dropped to 255 last year. And, but hey, he's a guy that can definitely hit for average, hit for home runs as well. He had another multi-hit game last night. Steven Duggar also had a hit. Cole Calhoun hit his 11th double of the season. Miguel Vargas, his 5th home run at the AAA level. That's very good to see, as we mentioned, for him as far as the power numbers at the AAA level. Pitching-wise, hey, it's the third rehab start for Ryan Pepiot, and it was a good one. He went 4 innings. I talked about last time, this is as good as its mechanics has ever looked. It's as connected as his body has ever been in terms of his mechanics, and he even mentioned that, hey, the ball is coming out of his hand very well right now. He feels very, very good. So Ryan Pepiot, 4 innings. He gave up 3 hits, just 1 run, had 4 strikeouts, and 1 walk. So Ryan Pepiot looking very good. Add him also to the mix. You talk about not getting, you needing extra starting pitching. Hey, he could definitely be a guy that could help you in many different roles as far as the pitching staff at the major league level when he gets back up there. Alec Gamboa went 2 innings. He gave up 3 runs on 5 hits. He had 3 strikeouts, 2 walks. Keegan Curtis went 2 innings scoreless. Keegan, good job for him last night. Exciting to see that. Gus Varlin, he was good again last night. The 98-mile-an-hour fastball, the great right at the top of the zone. He's been tumbling some changeups, the good left-turning slider. Gus Varlin, he went scoreless in an inning last night. So again, it was, it was not a great night in terms of the fact that the Oklahoma City Dodgers lost 4-2, but there were some good individual performances at beautiful Bricktown Ballpark last night in front of 4,420 fans in downtown Oklahoma City. So again, Oklahoma City, they dropped last night 4-2 to the Round Rock Express, the AAA affiliates of the Texas Rangers, and they moved their record. Check this out, 68-33 on the season. So they have had just a great season at the AAA level. The Tulsa Drillers continued their struggling ways as of late. They dropped last night a decision in Wichita. I will be in Wichita Thursday night, and I will get some interviews, get to see some of the action there and get some good video, but they dropped a decision last night 3-1. Beautiful Riverfront Stadium downtown Wichita. They had the old facility when they were back with the Royals affiliates in the forever, late 90s, early 2000s, but even before that, they had a facility called Lawrence Dumont Stadium, and it was a very nice stadium. They were the affiliates of the Royals, I believe AA affiliates back then. Matter of fact, I think the Tulsa play-by-play Dennis Higgins, he was actually the Wichita, they were called the Wranglers back then, the Wichita Wranglers play-by-play voice back then, and so he remembers Lawrence Dumont Stadium very, very well. So they tear down Lawrence Dumont Stadium about 5 years ago. Wichita actually lost their affiliate for several years, did not have affiliated baseball. They had an independent team there for several different years. And then whenever they did all the reshuffling to the minor leagues, they were included as one of the cities that were going to get an affiliated team. They were originally supposed to be the AAA affiliates of the Miami Marlins. That ended up not happening, so now they're the AA affiliates of the Minnesota Twins. Okay, so long story to say, they tore down Lawrence Dumont, and they built this beautiful new Riverfront Stadium in the exact same location as they had Lawrence Dumont. As a matter of fact, if you navigate Riverfront Stadium, and if you navigate Lawrence Dumont Stadium, it'll take you to the exact same, down to the inch, the exact same spot in the world, right where Riverfront Stadium sits right now. So a beautiful facility. My wife and I, my beautiful bride and I, who had our 24th anniversary yesterday, we love going to Wichita. We go there 2 or 3 times a year. Again, I'm going Thursday, so super pumped about that. But last night, the Drillers were only able to score 1 run, and they lost 3-1 to drop to 50-47 on the season. Austin Gauthier, he had a hit last night. His average at the AA level is .267, but it's .313 overall for the season. OPS 837 at the AA level. It's over 900 for the season. Yorbit Vivas, he went 1 for 4 last night. Emil Vargas also had a hit. Yusniel Diaz had a hit. Josh Stowers, Ismael Alcantara, they had hits as well. Yusniel Diaz hit his 13th double of the season. Austin Gauthier also had his 25th RBI at the AA level. If you remember, he got brought up to AA. As a matter of fact, I was in Wichita the first night that he was in AA, which was early June, like June 6th, June 7th, something like that. Ben Kasparius, got a chance to talk to him on Sunday. He got the start last night, went 4 innings, gave up 3 runs, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks. And Ryan Sublette, he came back in, the young man out of Texas Tech, threw a scoreless inning. And then Tanner Dodson came in and threw 2 scoreless innings last night. So Tanner Dodson has been throwing very well as of late. So, hey, another one of those frustrating nights last night for the AA Tulsa Drillers. At one point, they were the most talented team in all the minor leagues with all the moves the Dodgers have made. You know, we've seen Johnny DeLuca go all the way to the major league level. Andy Pajes was with the club at the beginning of the year. He got moved up to the AAA level. Landon Knack got moved up. They lost Emmet Sheehan. So this is a club right now that isn't what it was at the beginning of the year, but still some great players on it. Just 50-47 at this point because they've been struggling. And also their manager, Scott Hennessy, is fighting cancer right now, which is, hey, that's not just baseball. That's the game of life. So there's a lot of going on there. And so prayers out to Henny. I know everybody loves him. And the Tulsa Drillers, they'll bounce back and end up having a good end to this season. But again, lost last night 3-1, dropped to 50-47 on the season. Hi, Great Lakes Loons, they dropped a decision last night as well, 10-5 to the Fort Wayne Tin Caps, and it was in Fort Wayne last night. The Loons, they have had a wonderful season as well, 60-36 on the campaign, and they have already positioned themselves to be in the postseason playoffs, so that's super exciting. Last night, they had 8 hits and 5 runs. Yainer Fernandez had a multi-hit day. So did Kenneth Betancourt. Hey, Kenneth Betancourt, congratulations to him. He was at the single-A level at Rancho seemingly forever. It seemed like he was buried. He got moved finally back up to high-A Great Lakes. He's bounced back and forth. He's actually made it as high as Tulsa before in his career. And lo and behold, man, it shot some energy into him, and he has been hitting the baseball very, very well. Matter of fact, he's hitting 286 at the high A level, which is better than he was hitting at the single A level with Rancho. So that promotion for him, sometimes we see that when you get promoted, it shoots some adrenaline into you, gives you a fresh start, and you see a lot better production from guys. That's definitely happened to Kenneth Betancourt. Also on the night, Alex Freeland, he went 1 for 3. Lockwood Powell, he went 1 for 3 as well. And then Bubba Aline, he had a hit, and Jake Vogel had a hit. Alex Freeland actually hit his 12th double of the season. Kenneth Betancourt hit his first home run at the high A level, so that was exciting. Not only is he getting a lot of hits, he's starting to hit for power as well. Bubba Aline had his 27th RBI. Kenneth Betancourt, his home run was his 3rd RBI at the high A level, and for Alex Freeland, he had an RBI last night, RBI number 45. On the mound last night, Jermaine Rosario started. He went 4 1/3 innings. He gave up 3 earned runs. On the night, had 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, and gave up 5 hits. Rosario, boy, he's had that period. He went to 4-4 on the season as far as his win-loss record. We've talked about Rosario being that guy in the past. Has been up and down. He's been mostly up this year, so hey, he's had a good year. But last night, 4 1/3 innings, kind of neutral as far as that level goes. 3 earned runs, 5 Ks, 2 walks. Carlos de los Santos, he had a rough night last night. He gave up 4 runs. He's been fantastic as of late, but he gave up 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning last night. Had a strikeout and a walk, gave up 3 hits. Christian Suarez, he keeps pitching well. He threw a scoreless inning last night. Mitchell Turansky had a rough go of it last night, threw an inning, gave up 3 runs on 3 hits, and he had a strikeout and a walk, and Juan Murillo came in at the end. One of the hardest throwing right-handed pitchers, one of the hardest throwing pitchers, period, at the minor league level. Juan Murillo came in and threw a scoreless inning last night to finish the pitching up for the Great Lakes Loons to move his ERA to 2.37. So again, the Loons lose 10-5 to the Fort Wayne Tin Caps to drop to 60-36 on the season. Rancho Cucamonga Quakes rounded out a very difficult evening last night in the organization. All 4 affiliates lost, and that does not matter of fact, I can't remember that happening any other night or any other time this year. Thank goodness the LA Dodgers won last night. Otherwise, it would have been a tough day yesterday. But hey, one of the great things about baseball is you get to wake up the next day. You get to do it all again. Rancho, they lost 2-1 to the Grizzlies, and they dropped their season record to 54-43 on the season. Jose Izada had a good night last night offensively. He went 2 for 3. And then going down the line, Simon Reed, catcher out of Westmont College. McKinney Boyd originally grew up in the California area. He went 1 for 4 and had a hit last night. And so the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, 4 hits total on the night. 2 of those came from one player, Jose Izada, only scored 1 run. Izara had 2 total bases on the night and RBI number 36 for the Quakes. Pitching-wise, Chris Campos, the young man out of St. Mary's, who played shortstop for St. Mary's in college, a good right arm, very good athlete. He went 1 1/3 innings last night, gave up 1 earned run, had a strikeout and 4 walks and 2 hits. So, hey, as far as the earned run, hey, not a terrible outing for him last night, an inning and a third. And then Liam Doolin, the young man out of Australia, big dude, 3 2/3 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts, no walks, so a good performance for him. Hey, how about Jonathan Edwards, the young man out of Georgia Southern? He's a guy that the Dodgers are just trying to figure out how to get his really good stuff. He's really long, has good stuff, trying to figure out how to get it in the strike zone consistently. Great outing for him last night. He went 2 innings, scored us. He had 2 strikeouts and 1 walk and gave up absolutely no runs last night. So a good outing for Jonathan Edwards. And then Garrett McDaniels came in last night, and he threw a scoreless inning as well. McDaniels, he was drafted in 2018 by the Miami Marlins, and so he's a guy that has experience in the professional game, and he threw well last night for the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, but they're only again able to score 1 run on 4 hits. They lost 2-1 to the Grizzlies, and they moved the record to 54-43 on the season. So there you have it. There is our talk on the trade deadline. There's the minor league action from last night. Hope you enjoyed the show. I also hope that you tune in to Dodgers Dogs tonight. That's going to be 6 o'clock Pacific. Make that your pregame show that you tune into. Come and join. Leave your comments. That is our live show for the week, where you can come in as an audience and leave your thoughts and be a part of the show and make that a whole lot of fun. We've had great crowds so far. Again, that is 6 o'clock Pacific tonight. That would be 8 o'clock my time, which is Central, 9 o'clock Austin's time, which is Eastern. So make sure and tune into that tonight for the Dodgers Dogs live show and become part of our crowd. Also, just one last reminder that if you like this video and if you like this kind of content, make sure and like this video, keep leaving comments, interact with this video. That way, that it gets suggested more and it gets out there and people view it more as well. And also, don't forget that if you would like to help Dodgers Daily by donating, we have the link to our GoFundMe account in the description. So until next time, I would like to say, as always, thanks for tuning in, and go Dodgers.